Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, but you can call me Tiff. And I've already filmed this video. I filmed it last week and then I deleted the footage, so that is fantastic. And usually, as you would probably know, I would sit down and I would eat some food, normally fast food, it's normally my cheat day, and then I would tell you the story or the case that I'm going to cover. But like I said, I actually filmed this last week, Friday, and I accidentally deleted the footage, so there's no food today, it's just the case. I hope you guys are okay with that. I do just want to say really quickly that this video is going to be about a baby, a child, and I know some people don't like watching videos about children, about babies, so please, if you don't want to watch this video, click out now. I completely understand, and hopefully I'll see you in one of my other videos. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know, just in case. So now that all of that's been said, I'm just going to jump straight in to the case. The case we're going to be covering today is the case of Asiah Kudi. On the 11th of December 2019 at 6:06 p.m, 999 received a phone call, and this person identified themselves as Verafee Kudi. And Verafee Kudi was saying on the phone that her 20-month-old daughter wouldn't wake up and she'd been really ill for the past couple of days, and Verafee had administered Asiah some Calpol earlier that day, but since then Asiah hadn't woken back up. So the ambulance team obviously came out to where Asiah and Verafee was, and unfortunately when they arrived at the Royal Alexandra Children's Hospital in Brighton, Asiah Kudi was pronounced dead on arrival. When Verafee arrived at the hospital, she told the doctors the same story that she had told to the 999 operator on the phone. She said that Asiah hadn't been well for a couple of days, she didn't seem herself, and then that day on the 11th of December she gave Asiah some Calpol to try and make her feel better. Asiah then fell asleep, but she didn't wake up again. Now, an autopsy was performed on little Asiah's body, and what the autopsy revealed was that Asiah had died from a combination of starvation, ketoacidosis, which from what I can gather is a really serious complication of diabetes, and also influenza. That didn't really fit with Verafee's story because, like I said, Asiah had died from a combination, and one of these things being starvation. So this is when people started to raise their eyebrows a bit. Verafee and Asiah lived in a building, a sheltered accommodation, and this was owned by YMCA, I believe, or YMCA looked after the building on behalf of the Brighton Council. And sheltered accommodation, for anyone that doesn't know, it's essentially a building with individual flats, but there's staff that are there 24 hours to make sure the people that are living there are getting everything that they need. I actually have a family member that lives in sheltered accommodation, and that is because they've got mental health issues and they wouldn't be able to look after themselves properly without having a certain amount of care. And the staff at the YMCA sheltered accommodation, they actually reviewed the CCTV in December because obviously the story hadn't made much sense. They just wanted to see what had gone on and who had come in and out of the building. And this is where the horrific truth came out. Now, before I go on to tell you what had actually happened to Asiah and the events surrounding her death, I do just want to tell you a bit more about Verafee's teenage years. So it's said from Verafee's mother that up until the age of 14, Verafee was a really happy-go-lucky child. She was always smiling, she was always laughing, and Verafee's mother actually said, quote, she would light up the whole house with her loud laughter. So that kind of just gives you an idea that this 14-year-old girl that was just finding herself, finding her feet, was happy. She was happy with life, she was happy with her friends, presumably. But then all of a sudden, all of this changed. It seemed like as soon as Verafee hit 14, everything completely turned upside down. She turned into a completely different person. She became very closed off, she became very argumentative, and angry, and Verafee's mother said that she just seemed to mentally just shut down and shut everyone out. And then Verafee started missing a lot of school, and Verafee's mother reported her missing numerous times. And then following some complaints in regards to bullying, Verafee moved schools. Now, I couldn't find out if the bullying was being done to Verafee or Verafee was the perpetrator. I couldn't find that out. But nevertheless, she moved schools. And everyone was kind of hoping that her moving schools would make her happier and make her, you know, the same old Verafee again. But unfortunately, this didn't happen and things just got worse. And Verafee, at the age of 15, actually went missing for 5 weeks. Like, just imagine that, as a mother, your child goes missing at 15 for 5 weeks. I'm sure her mother was absolutely terrified. Now, this 5-week period is where social services became really, really involved in Verafee's life. And from what I can tell, Verafee was taken out of the care of her family and put into some sort of accommodation that was managed by social services. And this was because the social services department believed that Verafee was being sexually exploited, and also there was some statements in the sources that I've read that Verafee was either a witness to domestic violence or she was a victim of domestic violence. But either way, she was taken out of her household and she was put into this other accommodation. When Verafee was moved into this accommodation, she was there for 6 months, and Verafee then announced that she was pregnant. And I just want to pause here for a little while, because I just want us to take a moment and just think about what we was like at 15. Me at 15, I couldn't even look after myself. I can't really even look after myself now, let alone throwing a baby in the mix at 15 years old. This is not me trying to make excuses for what Verafee went on to do, but I do think it's really important that we acknowledge how young Verafee was, and considering that she'd been uprooted from probably a house that she'd spent years in with all the same family members, especially her mother, and she was just placed into this other accommodation, and then all of a sudden she finds herself pregnant. She must have been absolutely terrified. I would have been terrified. My camera just died, so if I look a bit different or if the camera angle's a bit different, that's why. So yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, as I was saying, Verafee gave birth to a little girl on the 22nd of March 2018, and she decided to name this little girl Asiah Kudi. Now, because of Verafee's involvement with social services, they were also very heavily involved in Asiah's life as well. And Asiah was made the subject of a child protection plan, and a child protection plan is basically a plan, and it tells the person who's looking after this child what needs to be done, when it needs to be done by, why it needs to be done, and it needs to be followed. And if the plan isn't followed, then it can be used in evidence to remove that child from that person's care. It was then decided to reduce this plan to a child in need plan, and the child in need plan is slightly different from the child protection plan. The child in need plan is actually voluntary, so the caregiver or the person looking after the child volunteers to be placed on the child in need plan, and they can refuse this as well. So from what I can gather, Verafee must have agreed to have this plan in place to make sure that Verafee and Asiah were getting as much help as they possibly could. And then this subsequently was removed altogether. So again, like I've said, the child in need plan is voluntary, so I assume that Verafee would have decided to stop the plan and would have decided to refuse any further help. So let's jump forward again to December 2019. And like I stated before earlier in the video, the YMCA staff, they actually reviewed the CCTV at the building because they just wanted to understand a bit more of what had happened or what had gone on. And this is where they saw Verafee leave her flat on the 5th of December, and to their disbelief, Verafee did not return back to the accommodation until the 11th of December. So let me just say that again. Verafee left on the 5th of December and returned on the 11th of December. That's 6 days. Verafee had willingly taken the decision to leave Asiah by herself without love, support, water, food, supervision, and she just decided to leave. Staff members at the YMCA building, they actually decided to take the CCTV to the police because obviously they realised that this was horrific. This was abandonment, basically. So they took the CCTV to the police, and the police reviewed the CCTV, and they obviously agreed with the staff that what Verafee had done was just unbelievable. Just leaving a 20-month-old baby to fend for themselves for 6 days. Just, you can't comprehend it, can you? I wouldn't even have left my siblings in the car to go to the garage to get some petrol or a drink or something in the car when they were 20 months old. I would take them with me. You don't even leave your child for 5 minutes, let alone for 6 bloody days. It's just unfathomable. That's what it is, unfathomable. So the police decided to do a bit of digging to see why on earth someone would leave their child for that many days. And it turned out the reason that little Asiah had been left was so her mum could go out and celebrate her 18th birthday, basically. And that's what she bloody did. She went all around London, and I think she even went to Coventry at one point. She was up in London, she went to Fulham. Fulham is 15 minutes away from where I live. Bearing in mind she lives in Brighton, so she had to travel all the way from Brighton to London to Fulham. And then she went to Elephant and Castle, to a club, and there's actually a clip of her in this club, and the DJ like shouts her out for her birthday, and like she's like putting her hands up, like, you know, living life, while her baby is at home fucking starving to death. That made me really angry when I watched that. And then, get this right, this infuriated me. So apparently there were text messages on Verafee's phone between Verafee and her mother, and it seemed like there was a family dinner that was organised, a birthday dinner for Verafee for her 18th. And Verafee had texted her mother basically saying, I'm too ill to come out, can we kind of push it back until I'm feeling better? Meanwhile, Verafee's texting her mates about coming to Fulham. Like, oh my god. While Verafee was out clubbing with her mates, having the time of her life, she also texted her mum again, and I think it was on the 8th of December that she texted her mum, and she said like she didn't have any money for electric. They was going to run out of electric and she didn't have any food in the house, so could her mum lend her some money so she could go to the shops and get some food for her and Asiah and pay the electric, so like the lights would stay on and stuff. Like, are you fucking joking, hon? Are you joking? Your child is sitting at home, starving to death. Somehow has caught influenza, which I've heard is so painful. And you're asking your mum for money so you can spend it on alcohol. I have no words. I literally have no words. And it's like, if you can text your mum and ask her for money, why the fuck couldn't you text her and ask her to look after the baby? And I also just want to point out that Verafee had actually told her friends that she'd come to meet in London that Asiah was staying with her mum, that her mum was looking after the baby. So she clearly fucking knew what she was doing was wrong, and why would you lie for? Now, the police decided to review more CCTV for a longer period of time, not just for December. And it turned out that Verafee had made leaving Asiah somewhat of a hobby. Like, she just seemed to pack up and go whenever she fucking felt like it. Just decided to leave a little girl on her own and just go off. And I'm going to tell you about the times that she left her, and I just want you to listen to this. Listen to how she abandoned this little girl, and on how many different occasions. So, on the 23rd of October 2019, Asiah was left for 7 hours and 18 minutes. 7 hours. I work for 7 hours. Could you imagine going to the office leaving your 20-month-old baby at home, going to the office, working. There's no one at home looking after them. No. And then again, on the 7th of November, Asiah is left for 7 hours and 37 minutes, once again. The 19th of November, Asiah is left for 17 hours and 13 minutes. 17 hours. I'd love to know what the fuck she was doing in those 17 hours. And then the 23rd of November, Asiah is left for 2 days, 5 hours and 51 minutes. 2 days. And then the 28th of November, Asiah is left for 11 hours and 35 minutes. So we can clearly see a pattern here. We can clearly see that Asiah is gradually starting to be left for longer periods of time. So this indicates to me that Verafee starts to think, she survived for 2 days, she survived for 11 hours, I'm sure she'll be fine for a whole fucking week. Left on 6 different occasions for that length of time. Like, it's absolutely, it's diabolical. And it's a miracle that she survived until December, if I'm being completely honest with you. Now, like I said before, earlier in the video, Asiah and Verafee, they lived in sheltered accommodation. And I've already explained what sheltered accommodation is, and that there's staff on hand 24 hours, or there should be, to help if help is needed. The family member that I have that lives in sheltered accommodation, the staff member go up to his flat every day and make sure that he's okay, that he's taking his medication, that he's got enough shopping, that, you know, he's doing all right. And for some reason, this didn't happen in this case, and I want to know why. I want to know why. I also want to know how the fuck no one realised that Asiah had been left alone, considering, as we've just found out, that Asiah was left on 6 different occasions. What, there wasn't one person that saw Verafee leave the building and think, where's the baby? I haven't seen anyone come in and go up to the flat that I would presume is going to look after the baby, so where's the baby? I just want to know why no one was monitoring Verafee and Asiah. How has this happened? How did this happen in sheltered accommodation when you're meant to be monitored, when you're meant to be given support? How did this happen? That's what I want to know. Now, when I was researching this case, I kept thinking to myself, and you're probably thinking it too, how did no one hear Asiah crying? Surely she was crying out if she was hungry, or she was lonely, she was scared, she was tired. She probably had a soiled nappy that hadn't been changed in days. So I was thinking, surely someone would have heard her cry and wondered why the baby was crying for so long. And, you know, there's different types of cries. If you've had small children in your house, or you've got small children, you know there's different types of cries. Like, there's a cry that will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you know that something's just wrong. When I started reading the expert testimonies that were brought forward, I found out why. At the trial, there was a doctor called Dr. Nicola Cleghorn, and Dr. Cleghorn stated that Asiah most likely wouldn't have cried for any length of time, and the reason this is because she, in most situations, would have realised that crying wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't make anyone come. She wouldn't get a response. Just think about that for a minute. A 20-month-old baby has already realised that crying isn't gonna attract any attention. The reason babies cry is because they can't communicate. Them crying is communicating. They're trying to tell us something. And in the end, little Asiah decided that she wasn't even going to bother crying. It's sickening. It's sickening to think about. At this point, the police have discovered and gathered so much evidence in regards to what Verafee had been doing in December for those 6 days, but also prior to that as well. And the police, they confronted Verafee with all of this evidence. At this moment in time, Verafee was still maintaining that she had been looking after Asiah. Asiah hadn't been well for a few days. She'd given her a cowpole, she'd fallen asleep and she hadn't woken up. And the police were like, oh, okay, so how do you explain this then? And then Verafee was like, oh, okay. And then she decided to change her story. And then the truth started coming out. She started to admit that yes, she had left Asiah for hours on end, but everything had been fine, so she just presumed that Asiah would be fine. I'm not really sure how you'd fucking think a baby that wouldn't be able to feed itself or change itself or wash itself would be okay for 6 days, but police have gathered all of this information, and that being the CCTV showing that Asiah had been left for days on end, not just once, multiple times. There was also loads of social media posts. You know, I said about Verafee had been out and she'd be in Elephant and Castle and all around London. This had been posted all over social media. Loads of it all over social media, so they took that as well. That was classed as evidence. And then also with the coroner's report stating that Asiah had died from a combination of starvation, ketoacidosis and influenza. So they've got a solid case now. And they decided to arrest and charge Asiah Kudi in March 2020, and Verafee actually pleaded guilty to this. So when you plead guilty, it doesn't go to trial because you've already admitted that you're guilty, so you don't need a jury to find you guilty. That was a lot of guilties in one sentence, but you get my drift. In one of the sources that I read, it stated that during the sentencing hearing, it was stated that Verafee had undergone a psychiatric examination, and this examination revealed that Verafee had some sort of personality disorder and also PTSD. The judge overlooking this case, that was Judge Kristinaxo. She feels the same way as me, I assume, because she basically stated that she was going to dismiss all of the claims of mental illness and PTSD because she just felt like that didn't have anything to do with what Verafee went on to do, if that makes sense. Like, your PTSD and your personality disorder or borderline personality disorder wouldn't have made you leave your child, your 20-month-old baby, unattended for that amount of time. Anyway, Verafee was charged with manslaughter, like I said earlier, and she was sentenced to 9 years in prison. And one of the sources that I've read, it said that Verafee has to serve 2/3 of her sentence before she can be released, so that's around 6 years. And I don't know if 6 years is long enough. But then again, she is so young. Maybe while she's in there, she can get the help that she needs and come out and be a better person and make better decisions. I don't know. I really, really don't know. It's a really tough one. And I know this one's been really heavy because it's been about a baby, basically. And it's always horrible to think about a baby or a child being in distress. It's just horrible. But I do think it's really important that we talk about these cases, especially the fact that they were in sheltered accommodation. Like, surely there's got to be someone responsible for that. There has to be some sort of investigation. Surely there has to be. Because I can't understand how it went unnoticed for so long. But yeah, that was the video today, guys. I hope you and guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I know it was a heavy one. If you've got any suggestions, please just drop them in the comments box. Please also let me know if you prefer the food at the beginning or you'd rather just the true crime stories, because we could just do a True Crime Tuesday instead of Tasty True Crime Tuesday, do you know what I mean? But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!